Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing?
Fabulous.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm just glad we're together. You know, that's a special privilege that I don't think we'll take for granted anytime soon, right? Well, I wanted to welcome all of you to our first series this year in Eggs and Issues, and I wanted to first thank, we just saw the superstars up here for Cox. Karen Fry is our new representative here in the Georgia area. And, you know, we're grateful for all the work that Cox does for the community. They certainly are a staple here in the community, and we appreciate all of your support, and thank you for that. And we look forward to continued partnership. I also want to thank my good friend, Dan Slagle, for joining us this morning. He certainly has done a great job as the chair of the 21st Century Partnership, and we look forward to hearing all the good things that they have going on for us today. Well, before we continue with the Love Fest, I'm going to call Mr. Collins up to the stage here. We'll have him do the invocation and the pledge. Mr. Collins.
That's loud. Ate too much breakfast. I had a community leader ask me recently, and said, why am I doing this? Nobody really seems to appreciate what I'm doing and so forth. And that's a good question. Why are we doing what we're doing? If we're serving this community for any other reason than for love of the people of this community, we're going to burn out. And the only right answer for serving this community, this great community, is love for the people of this community, even if they don't appreciate it in the moment. So as I look across this room this morning, I see all these leaders here. I think about all the change that could be wrought in this community for good, if we do it for the right reason. So if you'll stand with me and join me in prayer this morning. Father, we bow our heads before you this morning, knowing that you are the Lord our God. For you have created and sustained us. You have fashioned us with your powerful hand, and not we ourselves. We are your people, and the sheep of your pasture. You are our great shepherd, and therefore we shall not want. You care for us, your people, and because of that, we enter your presence with thanksgiving and praise. We thank you that you are the source of all that is good, that your mercy is from everlasting to everlasting, that your truth endures to all generations, and your grace is far greater than all of our sins. Help us by your grace and power to glorify you in the things we do and say here this morning. Use the food for which we are thankful to strengthen our bodies and our bodies for your loving service. For it's in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior, we pray. Amen. Amen. Please join me in the prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Heavy Mike. We also want to thank our host, such a gracious host, House and Healthcare, for letting us be here for Eggs and Issues. We thank them for their continued support. And then finally, we want to thank our presenting series sponsor, Synovus. And I'm going to call Mr. Ron Weigel. Where's he at? Mr. Weigel up to the stage and let him introduce our panel. I'm going to listen and see how heavy he is.
Good morning, and thank you, Michael. It's important to put things in perspective. So when we come to a meeting like this, I know we're going to learn a lot about what's going on in the community as it relates to the 21st Century Partnership, but it really is about community and people. I'm grateful to represent Synovus Bank this morning, and we're proud sponsors of this series. I always get a lot out of each individual morning that we get to share and hear what's going on in the community, the stakeholders, and it adds, and you can see who's involved, and you can see a lot of people are up first thing in the morning to just be involved and see where they can plug in. And so, just a minute, I'll just tell you, Synovus, we're a 133-year-old bank. I know we're turning a month and a half into year 2022, and we thought it was gonna be different than 2020 and 2021. But nevertheless, I know we all have goals, we all are trying to achieve certain things, and we just, if this year brings you to a point where you're trying to consider where you're at, either with your business, like, am I selling my business, am I thinking about buying one, am I thinking about retirement or succession planning, or something as simple as trying to be more efficient digitally. We have all the tools and resources, and so we'd appreciate the opportunity to help you and hear what your plans are and see if we can plug in and help you there. So we have a great team and love to have a conversation with you as the time is appropriate. So my real purpose in being here is to introduce somebody that's very vital and the team that's very vital to this organization. And so I want to take a few minutes and read these prepared remarks. Last time I was up here, I told a joke and I got heckled afterwards. So I'm gonna stick to the plan. John Kubenik does not need an introduction. We all know him, but Brigadier John Kubenik, United States Air Force retired, serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the 21st Century Partnership in Warner Robins. He's ultimately responsible for implementation of the vision, mission, and strategies of the partnership. A Georgia nonprofit corporation, the 21st Century Partnership is the only community enterprise dedicated solely to preserving the military presence of Robins Air Force Base, while helping Middle Georgia communities prepare to avert potential efforts to marginalize the mission of the base. The partnership accomplishes these goals principally by working closely with the national, regional, and local leadership, along with the community organizations, to make Middle Georgia as conducive as possible to build current missions and accept new missions, thereby enhancing 70-plus-year partnership between the base and the community. For more than 25 years, the partnership has been a key participant in all large-scale Department of Defense decision-making of impact to Robins Air Force Base. Please welcome General John Kubenik, along with Chamber CEO April Bragg, for today's program.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here this morning. I'm excited for us to be back. I'm tired of saying that I'm excited to be back because we've had a couple of interruptions in schedule over the last couple of years as our community has responded to the impacts of COVID and the different challenges that are presented. But I want to thank all of you. I mean, you in the room are our leaders. You are those that are invested in our community and the future of our community. And it's so exciting to be with you, to have the opportunity to represent you daily, and then the chance to sit with these guys and really talk about one of those secrets in the community. General Kubenik, this is not on the questions that I got approved from you, but we're going a little, Ron's not going off script, but I'm going off script. But I think it's so important, and that was part of the reason I had Ron read the information about the partnership, because people call us, at the chamber, or we'll comment in things, oh, we'll call the 21st Century Partnership, or that's why we have the partnership, but I don't know that it really is widely known beyond this room, the true value of having an organization like the 21st Century Partnership, the impact that it has in our community, and you've had the unique privilege of serving on both sides of the fence. So if you could just share real quickly in your introductory remarks why it is so vital that the partnership exists and that we have this collaborative and collective support that we enjoy here in Houston County and Middle Georgia.
You bet. Thanks, April, and thank you for, is this good? You all hear me okay? All right, great. Yeah. Thanks for putting this together again. How about a round of applause for our chamber, all the work that they do beyond over the last 2 years. They have held us together as a community, and I'm very grateful to be great partners with our chamber. So just first of all, thank you very much for that. It's an honor to serve with your 21st Century Partnership. Formed back in the early 90s when BRAC was a real threat to this base. And community leaders at the time said we need to organize, we need to put together an organization that can help us defend against that. And it was a real threat back then. And leaders like Eddie Wiggins and Bob Hatcher and political leaders like Sam Nunn came together and made sure that Robbins was not on the blacklist. And now we have a thriving community here in Middle Georgia because of that. And then ever since then, the partnership's real goal has been to enhance and support those missions that are at Robbins. And we get to do things, and I get to say things now that I couldn't say when I was wearing the uniform. And my great friends that are sitting back there in uniform right now can't say some things that we can say. And that's the way it goes. That's the way our system is set up. I've been stationed at a lot of different bases throughout our country, and there are some that have organizations, I will say, like this. No one is exactly like what we do because of you all. There's organizations that say they do the same thing, but they don't have near the support of the community that 21st Century Partnership has, because you all get it. You understand how important Robbins is, not just to this community in Middle Georgia. We know how important that is. We know what the economic impact is, but let me be real here. If that was all that it was, we wouldn't have this many people in this room, and we wouldn't have the same kind of support for the partnership. You support the partnership because we think about how we can help Robbins every day. That is what we do. And that's what you care about, because we know not only how important it is for our economic impact, but how important it is to our nation. And that's the most important thing. And so I think that's why we have been so successful, because we have great supporters like you, because this community understands the importance of Robbins and wants to do everything it can to support that base, those men and women who serve there, and the missions that are there.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that to kick us off. So, speaking of defense of our nation, I know many are familiar and have seen in the news about the retirement of J-Stars and the new missions coming to Middle Georgia. Can you just kind of get us up to date on that?
Absolutely. Amy, you'd like to come up? I was joking with Colonel Holbeck earlier about, I think we're going to talk about your weapon system.
Yeah, perhaps.
And before I do that, let me, you're going to hear from Dan and Jamie later, but let me introduce the two people that keep this partnership running on a daily basis, and they really, you know them all, you know them both very well, but Deborah Cox and Lori Freeman, please raise your hand. There you go. Give it up for them. Really have done a tremendous job supporting the partnership, working for under minimum wage for all that they do for us. But I want to thank you all publicly for everything you do for the partnership. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize my boss who is here today, chairman of the partnership, Dan Slagle. Dan, thank you. And thank you for all the support that you give to this. You represent this community very well in a lot of places, including today with the 4-star, and I'm very grateful for you, so thank you. Okay, J-Stars. So this should not be a surprise to everyone. We've seen it in the media now since probably we've been hearing about it for a while, right? Last May, there was a big announcement made. Our congressional delegation was part of that announcement with the then acting Secretary of the Air Force on the plan to retire the J-Stars. Now, many of you are very familiar with that weapon system, and Colonel Holbeck, Colonel Wright, if I say anything wrong about your weapon system, let me know. But having spent a little bit of time on that and maintaining it in a deployed location, man, that is a hard aircraft to fly. It is a hard aircraft to maintain. It is expensive to maintain. How many people have flown with Delta and flown on a 707 recently? Yep, well, they didn't think so. But that's what these men and women fly on every single day. Not just a 707, but used 707. So when the Air Force bought the J-Stars, they didn't go to Boeing and say, give me a brand new 707, because Boeing wasn't making them anymore. They went and bought used aircraft from all over the world. And literally, if you go and walk on one of their aircraft, you'll see it has a little paper that shows what that aircraft did in its previous life. Eastern Airline, cattle hauler in South America, and I'm not making that up. That is actually true. And so the United States Air Force invested in those and turned them into a great weapon system. But it doesn't negate the fact they're old and they're hard to maintain. Do they do a tremendous job for our nation? Absolutely. And it's in open source, so I can say it, and you guys can't. Right now, as our nation is kind of on the brink in the Ukraine, who's flying over Ukraine right now, looking down on the ground to see where the Russian forces are? It's your J-Stars. It's your J-Stars that's doing that right now. And you're allowed to clap for these guys right there. So no one's arguing that it is not a vitally important mission, or that the 461st and 116th do it very, very well. They are the best at what they do. So let's take that off the table. No one is saying it's not important. What the Air Force is saying is, as we look to the future and we get into a high-end contested environment, say with an adversary like China, how survivable is the 707 going to be in that kind of war, right? And so the Air Force is looking to the future, and at some point you have to snap that chalk line and say it's time to move on. And I'm very proud of this community, and I'm proud of our congressional delegation for understanding that. Because it's very easy, and you see it with other weapon systems in our nation, it's very easy for people to say no. It's very easy for a congressional delegation to say no. The Air Force is still flying the A-10 because people in Congress have said no. And sometimes not for great reasons. Our delegation, I give a lot of credit to, said, okay, we understand, but what does it mean for Robins? And so the announcement that happened in May was for the J-Stars to be retired, and then 4 new missions to come in to Robins Air Force Base to replace that. I'll give you my broad perspective on it, and then we can drill down into it. I don't want to take too much time, but we can drill down into it a little bit.
The alarm goes off at 9.
Okay, great. I'm good. So my broad perspective, these new missions are really good for Robins Air Force Base and for Middle Georgia in the long term. But we as a community have to have the long-term view here. There could be some bumps in the road between now and when we fulfill that long-term vision, but I think this community can handle those bumps in the road. We can do it in a way that has the foresight into what the future could hold for us. And that's where we as a community and as leaders need to be as we think about these new missions. And we can be sad we're losing our J-Stars, and we are. Or we can think, how can we take advantage of this opportunity to reshape Robins and our operational missions for the future? And so I think that's where we are with these 4 missions. So the 4 missions, an air control squadron that really controls everything that's happening in the air in the Middle East is going to be coming here. That fits right in the wheelhouse of what the 116th and the 461st do every day. I mean, it is a wheelhouse mission. There's some opportunities for that mission to grow into other control. In my mind and in my hope, as we look as the Space Force continues to grow, how can this air control become space control? And we look at that. That's something I think there's potential for growth there. There's a flying mission coming in called the E-11. It's a Bombardier aircraft. It's really a flying Wi-Fi node that helps communications in the battlefield. I think that's great coming in. I don't know how long-term that mission really is going to be. I've expressed that concern with leaders and with our congressional delegation, but it's a good stopgap, but it won't be enough long-term, but I still think it's a good start there. There's Spectrum Warfare Group coming in. As you think about, Ukraine a little bit right now, war's already started. There may not be little green men crossing the border, but I can tell you there's electrons flying back and forth every single day. And that hybrid war has started, and it started a long time ago. And so the more that we can set up Robins to be prepared for that future type of fight, and a Spectrum Warfare Group is great. It ties in really well with the expertise we have in electronic warfare, both in the program offices and in Ms. Stanley's software area. So there's a lot of goodness there. And then the last mission the Air Force has said is a classified mission that's coming in. I will tell you, the Secretary of the Air Force, when Secretary Wilson first talked about J-Star's retirement, made a promise that there would be an unmanned flying mission coming into Robins, so we're hopeful that that's part of that mission. I really think that is going to set this base up for the future. So all of these missions are forward-focused for the most part, and really have great opportunity for what our future will look like. It sets up Robins for the next generation, to be relevant in that next fight. And that's really what we as a community want. We want to make sure that we are supporting our national defense as best we can. And if the Air Force has future missions that are going to support that future fight, we want them here at Robins. We want to be able to support that. So that's kind of where I see those 4 missions. One last thing on it is, I spent a lot of time in the Air Force. I know how things work inside the fence. And I know that the Air Force needs to have pressure kept on them because they have a lot of priorities. Their priorities can change, a lot of things happening. So I'm very thankful to our congressional delegation. One thing the partnership worked over the last 6 months was a joint congressional letter to the Secretary of the Air Force and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, that basically says, we support your decision to retire J-Stars, but we also expect you to hold true to your promises, and we want to work closely with you. The details are a little lacking on these new missions as they come in. I have some concerns over the timelines of the retirement of J-Stars, which has been accelerated, and when these new missions will come in. There's a potential for a little bit of a bathtub of people until these new missions. Now, our base folks can't say that, but it's my personal opinion that there could be a bit of a bathtub of people, and so I just want to prep you for that. That's why I said we have to take the long view here and support these new missions for what they can be in the future, while keeping the pressure on the Air Force right now. So we had a letter signed by both senators and by Congressman Scott and Congressman Bishop, so a bipartisan letter to the Air Force that said, Air Force, we support you, but you need to follow through, and we want to work with you on that. I was very grateful that our delegation did that. It sends a real strong message to the Air Force, and your partnership will make sure that we continue to keep the pressure on the Air Force for those new missions to come in.
Wonderful. And speaking of delegation, we do have a few of our federal representatives here today. Thank you all, ladies, for the work that you do and the offices that you represent. So speaking of federal and moving back to bumps in the road, federal budget, we haven't seen funding for this year, and Congress keeps extending the CR, the continuing resolution. So how will this impact the base, and what do you expect for the next year? And kind of as a follow-on to that, because we can't have a conversation without somebody bringing it up, how likely is another BRAC?
So you all remember sequestration? We did that back in the 2012 timeframe, and how devastating that really was to the base, to our workforce. I was on a call 2 weeks ago with General Brown. Twice a year or so he does a call with all the retired generals so that we can be on message with where the Air Force is going. And it was really good insight, but he had some of their FM experts, their financial experts talk to us. They compare a year-long continuing resolution. So the budget's supposed to be passed every year. So far hasn't been passed, so we're under what's called a continuing resolution, meaning you can spend up to last year's authority, but you can't spend anything that was in the fiscal 22 budget. And so it's really like taking a really big cut. And the Air Force equates a year-long, so we've never done a year-long continuing resolution, meaning there's not a budget for this year, that we actually continue on with only operating under what we were allowed to last year. If we did that for a year-long continuing resolution, the impacts would be similar to sequestration impacts. The Air Force would stop flying. The funding would dry up. I don't know what would happen with our workforce and the pay there, but there's a big possibility. When we did sequestration, we furloughed our civilians, which is unfathomable. And I was a commander at the time that we had to do that. It was one of the hardest things I had to do, to stand up in front of my civilian workforce who dedicate their lives to serving this nation, just wearing a different cloth, and tell them that we aren't going to pay them right now. If we ever get to that point again, shame on us as a nation. So a year-long CR has dramatic impacts, and I know our friends in our congressional delegation are doing all they can to work that. Where I see it going right now, at least what the tea leaves say, you know, the current CR runs out on the 18th. That's this week. You know, there's not much appetite for a government shutdown, so most likely scenario is another continuing resolution. I see no way we get to an approved appropriations bill before the 18th. So most likely another continuing resolution through the March timeframe. And then, I mean, there's hope. And sometimes, you know, people have always told me hope is not a strategy, but sometimes it's all you got, all right? Sometimes it's all you got, in life and in this situation. And so we hope that, you know, when that March deadline hits, that we will get a full appropriation for the rest of the year. And then our friend, Ms. Jay, who's our senior executive service, who runs contracting here, then they're going to be really busy, because now they're going to have a lot of money to spend in a short period of time. And it's just the cycle that we go through. Whenever you get a chance to talk to your congressional representatives, one of the biggest things they can do to show they support the military is to pass a budget, and pass a budget on time. This continuing resolution over and over again just puts these men and women who serve in a really tough situation to try to do their jobs in the middle of trying to keep our nation safe. And the Robins team is not just the J-Stars, but Combat Comm. Miss Androsky is here from the Air Force Reserve Command. The Air Force Reserves are in the middle of what's going on in the Ukraine right now. Our Combat Comm folks, the ALC, Miss Stanley and her team in ALC have been very busy on how they can support what's going on and support for getting ready for the Ukraine. And so in the middle of all that, for our men and women to have to worry about their budget running out and not having a full budget is just, in my view, irresponsible from our Congress. And so we really need to get
And
that.
how far are we lagging behind, just so everybody realizes when this should have been passed?
Well, it should be passed when the fiscal year starts on 1 October. I mean, ideally, you should go on 1 October, there's a new authorization bill and a new appropriations bill for our military and our government to run on. It's a tough year, there's a lot going on in politics, but there's a responsibility that our elected officials have to pass a budget and to give the men and women that serve the resources they need. And so let me talk a little bit more about 23 from an Air Force perspective now, and what I am hearing at least. The Chief Staff of the Air Force has said that we've got to accelerate change or we're gonna lose. And the new Secretary of the Air Force has come on, Secretary Kendall, and this will be his first chance to influence the Air Force budget. And all that I'm hearing out of Washington is that Secretary Kendall is laser focused on the threat from China. In fact, he has said, if it doesn't scare China, why are we investing in it? And so as you think about, what that might look like. In fact, I heard, it was very interesting, some of my friends that are there in the building at the Pentagon had said that by the time Secretary Kendall came in this would have been like last summer-ish time frame. Normally the budget, 23 budget's done by then, it's going to the Department of Defense, and then working through the channels to come out in the President's budget, which should happen, anytime, but without a 22, we probably won't see 23 for a while. But what I heard was the Secretary said, let me see that. And I'm going to put my mark on this. Is something that was already baked, pretty much done. Put his mark on it. So I anticipate we will see some moonshots, if you will, from the Air Force trying to do some big things in the 23 budget. So we're watching that very closely to see what impacts that might have on Robbins and other areas. So 23 is going to be a very important budget if it ever comes out and if we ever get a 22 appropriation. And it's something that we're watching very closely to see what impacts that might have on our ALC, what impacts it might have on other areas on our base. So it bears watching.
Very good. Obviously great to hear about the new missions coming to Robbins, as we talked about a little earlier. How is this going to impact our workforce and business climate?
I think that's a great question. I think because Dan wrote it. So if you think about these new missions that are coming, it's a little different workforce than maybe some of the missions we've had in the past. Let me start by saying though that one of the core missions that happens at the base is Miss Stanley's group and Mr. Faison's group in the ALC, and there will always be that need for our skilled artisans that we have. We've got to make sure that we keep a strong pipeline with our technical college system. We are very blessed to have Dr. Allen and the technical college system as great partners. That workforce will always need to be there, and I think we have an unlimited pool if we get out to our surrounding areas in Middle Georgia to reach into some of these counties to get that workforce. So let's never forget, we need to have that foundational workforce that the ALC relies on every day. But then as you think about some of these new missions, they're going to require a little different skill set, and that's where Jamie's going to talk about what the work that he's doing in STEM education, because it's not just going to be Robbins that needs that new workforce in the future. You all are. All your businesses are. Whether you're in banking or hospital or anywhere, you're going to need a tech-savvy, digital age workforce. And so what we all collectively need to do is ensure that that workforce of the future is there. And we need to work early to get that done. And that's why the partnership spends a lot of time on STEM education. That workforce, we have to grow the pie because everyone's going to need that workforce. On the base, these new missions I talked about, whether it's an unmanned mission, a spectrum warfare group, air control, the advanced battle management system, which is kind of an umbrella that a lot of these missions will fall under, that's all going to require a different type of workforce. Also, one of the biggest and fastest growing areas on the base is Miss Stanley's software group. the software group that is in the ALC continues to grow. They can go out and hire 250 new software engineers right now if we could find them. But there's a competition for those people all over. And so we're working really hard with Ms. Stanley and Mr. Herman, who runs the software group, to ensure that we're growing and trying to grow that workforce for the future there. And so I want to give a lot of credit to Dr. Scott and all that he's doing with our Board of Education and our board members that are here. I want to thank you all for your partnership, for your vision as you look forward to what this community is going to need from a workforce. You know, one of the things I'm really proud of, and I want to thank Angie Giesling and the Development Authority. I know Chairman Holbert's here too. I want to thank you for all the work that you do. You all probably heard of Project Synergy. This was, and I'll tell a quick story here. When I was a commander, we had a meeting with community leaders, and I laid out the need for software growth and that we were running out of space. And there's a gentleman in this room who will tell the story differently, but I have the mic and he doesn't, so I'll tell my version of the story. And we finished this meeting, and I'm in my conference room on the base, and Chairman Stonecker looks at me and says, "General, I want to see you in your office." And I'm thinking to myself, I just got called into my own office. How does that work? I mean, only the chairman can call you into your own office. I mean, and so, we had to sit down, and he said, "We're going to help you." And now the development, through the work with the Development Authority, bought that building right across from the Museum of Aviation, leasing it to the base for a very small amount. And Ms. Stanley, who was the champion of this effort on the base, put a lot of money into it and turned it into a world-class software development factory right now that is the envy of every other base. And one of the coolest things about that, and with the forward-thinkingness that people like the chairman and Ms. Stanley have, was Dr. Scott's Career Academy is located right there with Ms. Stanley's folks who are doing software work. We're exposing young men and women to the work that we're going to need them to do in the future, and we're doing it right there together. That is the kind of partnership that the community needs, a partnership between our Development Authority, the base, the Board of Education, to say, we know we're going to need this workforce in the future. What can we do together to make sure we have that workforce? I'm really proud of that. You all should be very proud of that. And that's the kind of things we need to continue to do. Dan's going to talk a little bit about innovation if I don't talk the whole time, which I'm in danger of doing, I know.
Pretty close.
But notice I'm not stopping either.
I know.
I want to thank Angie and the Development Authority for the work they're doing on planning for education, for innovation in the future. The Middle Georgia Innovation Project that Angie is leading really is getting at this issue, not just for the base, but for everybody. It's getting at the idea of how do we develop the workforce of the future that is innovative, that's focused on these new technologies that can support what your businesses are going to need in the future, and what, more importantly, from my perspective, what the base is going to need in the future. So the work that Angie and Development Authority are doing there is very, very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a testament to this community how we have made all the necessary changes to grow our own and to fill those needed skills for the jobs of tomorrow. And I want to recognize John Waltz real quick with our partnership with Livability Media, because we know in addition to those jobs of the future, we also have those immediate openings like you talked about with Ms. Stanley right now. And so importing talent, private investment in tourism continues to be a priority for all of our development partners. And we have had just such great success with Livability Robbins Region. Many of you already participate in that, but if you don't know what I'm talking about or need to meet him, John Waltz is right there in the corner, raise his hand, and he'd be happy to talk to you about the efforts that we're leading to fill that gap now. So given all of these positive things impacting workforce and business, we know that we're the envy of other communities and throughout the country with what the partnership is doing and with Project Synergy. How do we rack and stack compared to other installations across the state and throughout the Air Force?
No, we're the best, of course.
Next question.
It's hard to, so we always like to compare ourselves, especially with the two other bases in the Air Force Sustainment Center at Tinker and at Hill. But even when I was in uniform and now, I will tell people, listen, it's apples to oranges comparisons. Every defense community is different than another. When you have one major installation in your state, you can expect that state to put a lot of money towards that installation. When you have 9, like we have in the state of Georgia, then, it's gonna fall more on this local community, and that's what you all have done. I mean, where the state has stepped in Oklahoma and Utah, this community has stepped in here. And that's why the base has an operation at the Middle Georgia Regional Airport. That's why we have synergy. That's why we're in downtown Macon and Blue Sky. It's because this community has stepped in to make that happen. And I think we're gonna have to continue that. Now, I'm encouraged by the state, and our state delegation has been very, very supportive of everything we're trying to do, from spouse licensure, which is a big issue for the Air Force, education funding, which is a big issue to the Air Force. The state has done a lot of good work in moving us forward, and they will continue to do so. We're very blessed with our state delegation that we have. The governor has stood up the Georgia Joint Defense Commission, so for the first time in a long, long time, we have an organization that is made up of community leaders and legislators that are thinking about how to support the federal military installations in the state of Georgia. And I think that's very important that we continue that. Georgia needs a voice with the federal installations. The federal installations need someone they can go to at the state to help them. Other states have that. We really don't. And so we need to continue to work on that. And that's one thing that your partnership has been engaged at and will continue to be engaged on. But how we rack and stack, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I don't know about y'all, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but right here in Middle Georgia and supporting this great base that we have. And we're really blessed with that base. I mean, you think about it, because of the big civilian population at our base, it's different than, say, a Moody Air Force Base where you have a lot of transitory folks that are in and out. Here you got folks especially with our Guard and our Reserve and our big civilian population they're lifelong residents here. They're second, third generation folks here. They have kids that grow up to be the mayor of Warner Robins that work on the base. I mean, you've got that kind of community here. It's amazing. That's what makes the community so special, and the relationship to the base and the community so special. So how do we rack? There's no one like us. And it doesn't mean we gotta take our eye off the ball. Right? We all have to continue to think about how we support the men and women and the missions of Robins every day. But we're doing great.
Well, and along those lines, so you've acknowledged a number of community and development partners that you work with. So let's talk about other entities that partner with you, and I'm sure the question you get asked more often than anything else is, how can the community support the work of the partnership in its support for Robins Air Force Base and the servicemen and women?
Well, thank you. We talk about a lot. Every one of you in this room are partners in ours. Our local governments, from the county to the cities, very, very important, and a great support to everything we do. We talked about healthcare, education, and our development authority. We haven't talked about our university system and our colleges and universities, but without them working on that workforce of the future and supporting the current needs, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. I'm very grateful for Middle Georgia State University putting a Center for Software Innovation in Warner Robins right across the street from the base to make sure that they are meeting everything they can. They're doing PhDs in cybersecurity now. Our universities and colleges are listening to what Ms. Stanley and others at the base are saying we need, and they're putting those programs into effect. When the ALC really expanded their robotics work, which is an amazing thing if you ever get a chance to see what they're doing in robotics, we went both to Mercer and their engineering program and to Central Georgia Tech and said we need robotic operators and we need robotic engineers. And so every entity that's represented here in Middle Georgia has some role in supporting Robins Air Force Base. We're fortunate and blessed in the partnership that we can be your voice. We can be your translator. A lot of times it's kind of, well, I want to support the base, but I'm not sure how. I want to be involved, but I don't exactly know. It's, there's that big fence, and it's kind of daunting to think about how I interact with these folks. Amy Holbeck is, she's a giant. It's just like, scary to talk to her. Just kidding, she's an amazing leader. So we can help. If you ever want to support the Robins, you wonder how I can. That's what we're here for. That's what you ask us to do, and that's what we're blessed to be able to do, to help translate that from one to the other. We try to be very attentive to the base and what they need. And when we hear what they need, then we call together you all and we move out in action. If there's things that you want to do with the base, you certainly, have great relationships already and can go directly to them. But if you're uncomfortable, let us help you, and that's what we're here for. And one last way, shameful plug for the partnership, we're a nonprofit. We rely on the generosity of many of you all and your businesses and our communities and our governments that fund us. We don't have deep pockets. We try to operate very frugally and effectively, but we're reliant on you all to support us. So thank you for those who have been long time supporters of us. And if you haven't been and you want to be, then let us know. And we actually have a new website. You have these little cards here on your tables. We have these cool cards. So Deborah and Lori have done a great job. They've revamped our logo. They redid the website. All that is voodoo magic as far as I'm concerned. I have no idea how that stuff works, but they did a great job with it. And for the first time, we have a pretty effective way you can donate online on our website. So whether you're personally want to support the partnership like that, or your business may want to, give us a call or go on the website and take a look at it. And we appreciate the support we get, and that's what keeps us going.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and you can pause for a little water because I'm going to ask Dan some questions now to give you a little bit of a break. But Dan, I know the work that you do is synonymous with innovation and just forging a new path forward for our community. So, why is innovation in this project that you're working on so important to our community? And for the purposes of this discussion, if you could just kind of define innovation through the lens that you guys are looking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So this is working. Good deal. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the question. So General Kobenek talked about accelerate, change, or lose. That is absolutely the way that the Air Force is going. What the heck does accelerate, change, or lose mean? That's trying to find new ways of doing business and doing mission in the future. DoD has recognized this as well. And a lot of times you'll hear people talking about software-specific technologies associated with that. But in the end, really all of our workforce, all of you, all of your businesses are a part of that effort. So the DoD came out with a recent policy, this is like 3 days old now, that are talking about we must empower the broader workforce as contributors to technology. Developers not the only ones who impact modernization, from infrastructure managers to operators. The entire workforce can help evolve technology. Very true. We must drive forward to a technology-literate workforce. The entire workforce must understand their role in delivering technology and find ways to streamline processes, push for automation, and better leverage technology. You guys are doing that every day in your own businesses, right? What is innovation? We say that a lot, and a lot of people, we get the question, what the heck are you talking about? So really, everybody is doing this, as I said. I'll give some examples of that here in a little bit, but let me go back to a real good example of what innovation is. A lot of people equate it to invention. Oftentimes, invention truly is just innovation. How many people remember the Sony Walkman? Anybody remember that? Man, that was neat. Everybody was able to get one of those. It started out, actually, it was called the Pressman. Sony had a tape recorder that they were selling to press folks, and the whole point of it was you would record a conversation, you could play it back, and somebody in the company said, well, why don't we change the marketing on that and sell it to people? They could listen to music, they could start to listen to their own music. Of course, they did the marketing study, and marketing said, what are you talking about? Nobody's going to want to buy this. Every one of us probably had one of those at some point in our lives. That's an innovation. So they're innovating how they're taking a current product and pushing that out. So what did the Sony Walkman do? Sony Walkman gave the ability for the first time in history for everybody to pick their own personal music and carry it with them. That was the innovation that was a part of that. Before then, You had the radio station, you might have an 8-track player, cassettes were just coming online. You still didn't have mixtapes, but eventually that came. And as a part of that, for the first time, everybody was able to take their own music and listen personally to the music. They developed them with headphones you can put in your own ears. What did that drive then next? Well, eventually people started to evolve. They wanted to get bigger devices, so then they started putting onboard memory. You started getting streaming services to be able to provide that music, which then evolved into electronic devices. As a matter of fact, what's amazing, about 3 months before the iPhone came out, a company came out with, on one side of it was a phone, telephone. You flipped it over and it was basically a Walkman, so it had all the electronic music, but it wasn't integrated. So what did the iPhone do? They integrated that and turned it into a smartphone. Nobody had thought about that at the time, and they had it connected to the internet. So now you could stream all that music, you could stream information, you could get data like you had never had before, which has brought us to the smartphones that we have today. Instantaneous information. All of that was innovation throughout the whole process. So that's an example of a technology-driven innovation. Started from somebody having a brilliant idea and innovating a product that they already had. That's innovation. Another great example of innovation that I love that's in this community is one of the things that we had, beginning of the pandemic, oh my goodness, people are gonna be locked down. How do we get word out to folks that, if somebody has a way to be able to get a hold of pies, or somebody is delivering meals from restaurants. Robin's To Go was born. You guys did a wonderful job in being able to innovate in communications, and that has evolved into Robin's Works and a lot of other types of innovative projects. That's innovation. Another thing that happened because of the pandemic, remote work was happening before the pandemic started. People were doing that, but nobody really thought about it, and a lot of business leaders are like, what? I'm not gonna have my employees here at the office? That doesn't make any sense. Post-pandemic, that is gonna become one of the ways that we're operating in our communities. They're going to have their employees working from home, coming in. Innovative people are gonna be working together. A lot of your transactional folks are probably gonna be working from the house. That changes how we're doing business in the future. That is innovation. So why is our focus on software? Why do you hear us talking about software so much? Because all of the things that I just talked about are all software driven. Software underpins everything that we're doing today. Your car is driven by software. Your refrigerators, in many cases, are driven by software, amazingly enough. I find that fascinating. Toasters, they have toasters out there that are web connected. What? So that's kind of why that is important, why we drive to software innovations, why you hear us talking about that. But in the end, it is about innovation overall.
So, and can you speak a little bit to the Middle Georgia Innovation Corridor project, if you will, just in a terms of people ask, where is that? What defines Middle Georgia? What is the focus of the effort?
Sure. So the Middle Georgia Innovation Project, thank you, Angie Giesling. It's been a great project that came together across the region, looking at how we're driving innovation and what our capabilities are. And what we discovered as that process went through is that, yeah, there's quite a bit of innovation already going on in this community. We just need to be bringing it out in the forefront more often. So, one piece that you can really get in as a part of that is you can get involved in this. All you have to do is go to 478innovates.com. I should know that. It's off the top. I had to look at my sheet of paper for the love of God. Well, there's a pledge on the website. If you go to the website and take a look at it, you can put down, yep, my business is going to be an innovative business. We are going to be looking for innovative solutions, and we're going to look for other innovators in the community. One aspect of this is always think about how we can be working with other innovators in our region. Yep, every one of us are ensuring that we're protecting our own competitive edge, that we're doing the things that we need to do to keep our business moving forward, but there's also areas that all of us can work together. Like I said, all of you are innovating every day. Banking industry. How much has the banking industry changed since COVID-19 happened? It's been huge. They're seeing their numbers change in who's actually coming into, their offices, and more people are doing things online. It's changing how the banking industry is happening. They're innovating. The medical industry, oh my goodness, the medical industry is all kinds of innovation as they've been moving forward. Most of our industries are, it's not just defense community. So if we're all working together to define what innovation is in our own community, that is gonna be what is gonna help not only our community, but also Robins Air Force Base. That's the type of stuff that they need at the base. Those are the type of people that they need to hire, that you need to hire. We're all gonna be working towards that, and that elevates all of our workforce into thinking in an innovation ecosystem manner, so that we're all working together to advance our efforts.
Perfect. And we'll send that link out in our recap for 478 Innovates, because signing that pledge, we're then looped in with the future communication about ongoing efforts and ways that we can really highlight innovation throughout our community. Yes, beautiful. All right, Jamie, you've got the mic. It's finally your turn. So you're the STEM guy. I mean, that's how we know you. That's how people relate with you here. So I know that you would think that COVID would have slowed you down a little bit with the nature of what you do with in-person events, in schools and with K-12 and higher ed. But there have been a lot of good news stories about STEM outreach over the last 2 years. Can you share some of those with us this morning?
Thank you, April. I would be glad to do that. COVID did change a lot of things. We all know that. But let me just follow up on something that General Kavenick said about the Synergy Center. They are offering high school internships in software. Just yesterday, I had the opportunity to do practice interviews with some of the students from Houston County who will be interviewing for those internships at the Synergy Center. I was able to give them some feedback as they prepare for their real interviews. Many of these students have never had to interview before. You mentioned also raising funds. We are a nonprofit, and so everything that we spend comes from our sponsors and donors. Just before COVID, in fact it was the weekend before COVID hit, we had the first STEM Palooza at the museum, which is a thing that we were trying to start to bring together students, parents, teachers, as well as academia and industry for high school students, just to connect everybody so they could get an awareness for what kind of STEM education and careers are available to them post-high school. At that particular event at the museum, I had a little bit of money that had been contributed, and I offered a door prize for the high school students, $500 scholarship. Now, if you've got students in college, you know $500 doesn't go a long way. But just about 3 weeks ago, I ran into the mother of the winner of that particular scholarship. He did not know at the time when he left high school what he was going to do with his life. But with that scholarship and what he learned at the Palooza, he actually went on to Middle Georgia State in pre-engineering, and he's now studying mechanical engineering at Kennesaw State, all because of that little $500 scholarship he got at the Palooza. So talking about some of the other events where COVID has hit, a lot of our competitive robotics, and again, you mentioned robotics, competitive robotics for the elementary, middle, and high school students, very big in Georgia. We've been able to start a few teams. Prior to COVID, we had 10 teams signed up in the middle school, high school league that we were just starting in Macon for all of middle Georgia. And because of COVID, a lot of those schools had to drop out and such. But we, this weekend, coming up this Saturday, in Gainesville, Georgia, we will have the state championship for the First Tech Challenge. That's the middle school and high school competitive robotics leagues. And of the 4 teams that we actually had for this season, 2 of those are advanced to state. And we will have that in Gainesville, Georgia this Saturday. I'll be wearing stripes, I'll be a referee. It'll be the good kind of stripes.
I was going to ask.
Thank you for that. Just last month, we had the Super Regional at the museum for the first LEGO League, which is the elementary and middle school league. We had 16 teams from across Georgia, teams that were allowed to travel to middle Georgia, and they competed, and several of those teams went on to the state championship at Georgia Tech just 2 weeks ago. And this past fall, we had the high school robotics. It was an off-season event. Your Houston County team is a world-class robotics team at the Career Academy. This was an off-season event, and they did very well at the Ag Center in October. But the big news is the Career Academy's audio-visual class, thank you, Dr. Scott, for allowing them to do this, spent 2 days at this event actually working a live sporting event with streaming video, multimedia, and it gave them some real hands-on experience with a live event. And these students, these high school students, were actually running the audio-visual for this competitive event. And again, thank you, sir. Dr. Scott walked away and go, "These are my kids." It was really impressive. And finally, the Technology Student Association has its annual Tech Challenge Day at the Ag Center. And again, the Houston County Career Academy had a team there. We had teams from all over the state of Georgia. And Ms. Stanley, many of the judges at that event were civilian volunteers and military from the base that made that happen. That event could not happen without those kind of things. So there's your connection to Robbins, and in spite of COVID, we pulled a lot of those things off.
That's fantastic. So, looking ahead, what can we look forward to in developing tomorrow's STEM skilled workforce?
That is so important. We continue to have career fairs all across Middle Georgia, and we get volunteers from the base. We get volunteers from industry and community to go to those career fairs to talk to these students. We have career academies all over Middle Georgia, in Jones County, Bibb County, here in Houston County. Monroe County has a career academy, and we have volunteers that go and talk to these students about careers and education in STEM. And we have science fairs. We have judges that come from the base, from many of the industries and businesses you represent, that help these students with their science projects. And then we are working right now, we're very close to signing an agreement between the partnership and the base so that we can actually cooperate on a regular basis. When I hear about these things where we need the volunteers from all of the community, we can actually tap into the civilians at the base, engineers and all the other career fields, to help with those career fairs, science fairs, and all the other projects that we have going on in Middle Georgia, building tomorrow's STEM workforce.
That's exciting. It's a great time to be in Middle Georgia, for sure. General Kavinick, any closing remarks? Believe it or not, we've got 3 minutes left.
So, STEM, innovation, I want to make one thing clear. The partnership is not here to get into anyone's lane that's in this community. We've got great development authorities, we've got great education system. Well, all we're here to do is try to help pull people together to support the men and women at Robbins Air Force Base. It's our singular focus. And we see that when you raise the tide, all boats rise, right? And as we raise the tide in Middle Georgia, and we can help contribute to support all that you all are doing, it's going to help Robbins Air Force Base. And so if there's any areas you think we need to be involved in that we're not, or any areas we're too involved in and you think we need to back off, you just need to tell us. But we're going to be singularly focused on how we can support the great men and women at Robbins Air Force Base and their missions. So thanks, AFR. I appreciate all that you and the Chamber are doing for us.
Thank you, and join me in thanking our panel. Thank you all again for coming and being here today. It is clear that we've got a bright future here in Middle Georgia. And speaking of Robbins Air Force Base, we will be right back here on March the 1st for State of the Base. Due to some in-person meeting restrictions, we are at a waiting list for that event, but if you would like to attend, we would love for you to go on our website and mark that. You'll get a notice about that coming out in your emails here in the next hour or so, as we continue to show our support for Robbins and their leadership. We can't wait to hear from all of our major mission partners about their bright days ahead and opportunities for community involvement. Another exciting date that you've probably seen on the screen, we are hosting our 2nd Robbins Works Job Fair on your lucky day, St. Patrick's Day, March the 17th, in partnership with the City of Warren Robins, Houston County Development Authority, WorkSource Georgia, and Central Georgia Technical College. If you have jobs to fill, I encourage you to participate in this. We hosted our first one at the end of August last year. We had over 600 job seekers on site. Many of you were there and are shaking your heads. It was truly a mind-blowing experience. It was our first one that we hosted, but there was so much energy. We had businesses from every business sector there looking to fill critical roles in their organization, and every single organization walked away with at least one, if not multiple, quality hires from that, and we're excited about moving forward. And again, as General Kavenick said, you know, we know our lane as a chamber, and we are not in the education space or development authority space, but because of the innovation Dan referenced through things like Robotics to Go, we now have that connection to the community, and so we are serving as the mouthpiece and the convener in order to connect people and resources, which is such a critical role for our organization and our community at this time. I want to thank our sponsors, Synovus, and House and Healthcare for your ongoing support of this series and the vital content that we bring each time. Cox, Karen, welcome to Middle Georgia. We're so excited to have you, and then of course our program today with the partnership. I always leave these inspired and excited about the work ahead of us and proud to live here in Middle Georgia. So with that said, I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time, okay?